Live your life, boy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Conspiracy Farm, where we don't start the conspiracies, we just add the water. And now, your host of the most state-of-the-art, most informed podcast on the interweb, I present to you Pat Miletich and Jeffrey Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for war?
Yeah, rear naked choke of Cocker Spaniel, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Bro.
Change the neighborhood up.
Conspiracy Farm. Go. Check it out.
Boom! Off to the races, ladies and gentlemen. Locked and loaded for another episode for the archives of the Conspiracy Farm. Jeffrey Wilson riding shotgun, as always, with my partner in crime, UFC Hall of Famer, eater of worlds, lover of ice cream, Pat Miletich. How we doing, champ?
I'm doing good, man. I don't love ice cream anymore. My kids get it all. They eat it up before I get any of it now. So, you know, it is what it is. But I'm feeling shaggy, brother. I am getting a long beard. I'm looking kind of homeless and stuff, you know, and I don't have to be on fight broadcasts, so I'm just growing out the beard, growing out the hair, and I'm going to get crazy.
Letting the Just for Men stay on the shelf for now. I love it. I appreciate, as always, brother, you always come through with just some killer guests. And this one, I've known who he is, but just reading, you know, the bio he gave us and his backstory, and such a very, very fascinating story, this gentleman. His name is Ray Yee, ladies and gentlemen. He's born and raised in 1969, Portland, Oregon. His family, which we're going to talk about, has a very interesting background in China. Him growing up, you know, just like other kids, he just wanted to fit in, skinny kid, you know, got picked on. His parents necessarily didn't think he was embracing his roots as much, so they wound up hooking him up with his uncle to learn martial arts, etc. We're going to hear all about it. His martial arts background is absolutely insane, ladies and gentlemen. 9th degree black belt in the Filipino arts of Kali Silat, Eskrima, Escrido, Pangamont. I probably massacred that. But, I mean, just an illustrious, deep background in martial arts, and one in particular that I'm going to pick his brain on that just blew my mind. Ray Yee is joining us today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thank you so much, guys, for having me on the show. It's truly an honor.
Without a doubt. Patrick, I mean, if you don't mind, kick us off on how long you've known Ray, some of the stories you guys have talked about to, you know, kind of prompt to get him on the show.
You know, through I've known of Ray for many, many years, and obviously never got an opportunity to train with him until of late. You know, I've always, you know, we don't have any experts in Filipino martial arts and knife and eskrima, and I've always been fascinated with it and wanted to do it, and finally got a chance, and he took the time and worked with me. We got in the cage and teaching me some patterns for stick fighting, knife fighting, and I'm just fascinated with it. And I was like a stumbling idiot trying to get through this beginner level stuff, because my knife stuff and my fighting stuff is, look, I'm a caveman. I'll just smash. I'm not a surgeon. So I want to learn more of the surgery stuff. And that's why I wanted to hang out with Ray. So he's an expert in a lot of different things and has trained a lot of great fighters also in mixed martial arts. So it was an honor to just get the chance to work with him.
Well, and as you'd said, you'd heard some pretty cool stories. Ray, give us a little bit. I mean, I just kind of did a cursory on a little bit of your background there. Tell us, you know, little Ray Yee, you know, how you became who you are, a little bit on your, what kind of the majority, I think what we're going to talk about here is kind of your political, not your political background, but kind of your parents' upbringing in China, the political hardships they had to go through. Tell us a little bit about all that, bro.
Well, as far as my background, you know, I was born in the United States. I'm a first generation American. You know, 1969 was my birth year. And, you know, like you said, I really wanted to just fit in. I loved everything American, you know, I loved hamburgers. I loved, you know, Batman and Robin, you know, all the things that you grow up as a kid in the United States, I embraced, you know, and, you know, I was lucky enough that I was able to learn how to speak, you know, Cantonese, which is a dialect in Chinese, and English at the same time. But as I got into school, you know, I wanted to distance myself even more from my heritage because, again, like you said, I did get picked on. You know, the school that I went to, elementary school and kindergarten, there was only like 2 or 3, you know, kids that were a little different. I was one of them, you know, and every year there was just a few kids, but there was, you know, always the group of kids that wanted to pick on the kids that were different. You know what I mean? And so when I got a little bit older, my parents just decided that, hey, this kid's, doing good, but he needs to understand the struggles and what other cultures, especially in Southeast Asia, had to deal with, and what we dealt with, So I started going my first place was Hong Kong that I went to, where my uncle and my mother's side of the family lives, and subsequently went to a couple other really, really cool countries, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, Japan, and that's really where I got my first taste of martial arts.
Nice.
Very cool. So name some of the people that you've trained with over the years. I mean, because there's it's a pretty impressive list of folks that you've been able to train underneath.
So I've been blessed enough to, train with Dan Inosanto, who was, Bruce Lee's top protege.
Yes.
He's one of 3 men that were ever, certified under Bruce Lee. And he was the only guy that was certified to teach Jeet Kune Do. He's one of my mentors and main instructors. I'm under him for the Jinfan Jeet Kune Do and also the Filipino Kali Eskrima on the Silat. I've trained under Grandmaster Chai Siasut, who is my Muay Thai instructor. Eric Polson, who was the first American that ever, went over to China or Japan and won the light heavyweight championship in Shuto. He's my combat submission wrestling MMA coach. Nicholas Sagnac, who's my Savat instructor. That's French kickboxing. Grandmaster Kakwa Canetti, who was one of the original founding fathers of the Dosipars Eskrima line. One of his top students, who's one of my best friends, Chris Petrelli, former Army Ranger, phenomenal, martial artist and just an amazing human being. Broke his back in doing a halo jump, and they told him to never walk again, and
wow.
They proved him wrong. So I mean, I just been really, really blessed that I was able to do the steps I was able to do as far as being introduced to martial arts through my parents and my uncle and my uncle's, colleagues. And then when I came back to the States, I tried everything from karate to ninjutsu to Japanese jiu-jitsu to, Kempo, anything I could get my hands on. And then in 1989 was when I first started kind of on the path that I'm on now, as far as like kind of streamlining everything. And in 1994 was when I just said, hell, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And that's where my path, really, really took me to where I'm at now.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about, the history, what your father went through, what your mother went through with communist China, with your father being a POW. Tell us some of those stories, the hardships that they dealt with, so that people can relate and get a historical picture first before we start comparing things that are happening now here in the United States.
For sure. So a lot of people don't really know the whole backstory. I mean, literally for like 22 years, China was in internal strife, and during that time, there became 2 parties. There was more of a Democratic Party and more of a Communist Party. In the middle of it, there was a Japanese invasion, and then towards the end was the final, takeover of the Communist Party. My father was born in 1922. He grew up in a really poor family that were farmers. His parents died when he was very young, due to all the violence that was going on and all the wars, and civil wars that were going on. He was raised by his grandmother, who's my great grandmother. I remember him telling me stories about how they didn't have enough money to eat, and as a farmer, or their crops wouldn't do well, but the neighbors' crops would do well. So I remember him telling me how he would sneak out at night to go to the neighbor's farm to steal food for him and his grandmother to eat. He when he was old enough, he joined the army that was the resistance side of the Civil War against the communists, and fought against the Japanese, and then ended up being captured as a POW. My father was a communications operator for the Army, and so they kept him as a POW and interrogated him consistently, because being in that position, they thought that he was had private information, about plans of attack, strategies, things like that. So basically, was interrogating him on a consistent basis and torturing him for information. Finally, they figured out that he was just reading off whatever papers were given to him to translate to give to information to the Army squads that were out operating, and they made him crawl across broken glass and plead for his life before they basically exiled him out of his own country that he was born in. My mother was born in 1935, a little later. There's a little age difference between my mother and father. But my mother's side of the family was, scholars and doctors. My grandfather was a doctor of Oriental medicine and taught, the healing arts, and also taught, people how to write and read, and which was at the time, if you guys understand any of the communist takeovers or any of the takeovers, the first thing they want to do is burn all the books and to learn how to write. So he.
Absolutely.
That had his family stayed in China, they either would have been kept as prisoners, killed, or separated. So they immigrated to Hong Kong, which is a British colony, which is a safe haven for Chinese that were running from the communists and the war. And so that's pretty much kind of a backstory of them growing up.
I know that was, you didn't necessarily gloss over it because it is part of the story, but your father, part of the conditions, it sounded like, for him to be free, crawling on his knees on broken glass, begging for his life. That's a tough one to swallow, man.
Yeah, man. It's just crazy, as a kid, just having your dad show you these scars. He had deep, dark scars in his shins and his knees that were from the glass. So, it wasn't like just a little piece here and there. You could tell that it was just like cut up and, just mangled, still, as an adult now, kind of brings a little bit of, mistiness to my eyes and tears in my eyes, kind of just, thinking about what my dad had to go through,
Yeah. I just can't even, when I read that, I'm just like, I don't know. My brain just didn't process. You know what I mean? Obviously I know it happened to him. I'm just like, I can't even imagine. But then, of course, he comes over here and works his ass off so we can give you a life and instill in you the value of hard work, which obviously is a lesson that stuck.
Absolutely, man. I think that's the most valuable lesson that I could have gotten, and I couldn't have gotten it from any book or any college degree. It was just really about, that this is one of the greatest countries in the freaking world, as far as your ability to make something of yourself if you just, apply yourself and just work hard and not spend your money on stupid shit of a system.
Yeah, you can cuss.
Yeah,
That's all good.
That was one of the biggest lessons, honestly, you guys. And, just the atrocities that I heard about growing up, the Japanese and the communists, when they would go into the villages and the provinces, they would just, they would rape the men, the women and the girls. They would take the babies and just, throw them up in the air and hit, stick them on pitchforks. They would, kick the dead babies on the ground like a soccer ball. And you hear about this in other cultures too. When people go in and invade, there are no nice invasions. There are no nice takeovers. They want to just break your spirit, break your morals, break everything about you, your history, destroy everything, and then start over.
Yeah, when we had on Josh Howitt, good friend of the show, good friend of ours, Tales in Africa, particularly South Africa, and he was saying when invading forces come in, they would have, as you basically said, baby catching parties with bayonets on the end of AKs, and yeah, it gets dark, man. It definitely does. And so I can imagine, reading your bio, like you said, your dad, and most of these people who are, come from these kind of dark places, they don't really want to talk about it too much, but you said after a couple beers, your dad would tell you a few stories.
Yeah, man. My dad worked, like I said, and you guys mentioned, he worked his ass off, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, 10, 12-hour days. He worked between, we were living in Portland, but my father worked in Portland and in Salem. So whatever work he could do, he just kept working just to build up that nest egg and to pay off the house. He was always the kind of guy that was like, if you can't afford it, you shouldn't buy it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then as far as, just understanding what your heritage is. And I think that's what's missing in today's society is, the last couple of generations, I mean, they're nice people, but they don't have the same work ethics. They don't have the same, and part of it's because, their parents had to, they weren't, the same. My parents stuck together their entire lives, I mean, there was no divorces. I mean, they had hard times, but, and then my mother stayed at home with me until I was 12 years old before she even got a job, so, it was always, a cultivation of a child, until the point that he was old enough to take care of himself. Whereas I think now you get kids that are brought up on social media or YouTube or,
right.
They just think that life is so unfair and they don't have any idea.
There's no struggle. Yeah. We talk about that, the pussification of our,
These millennials, they have no idea what strife is. And they sit there and go, oh, life is so unfair. And, we just should live in a social society where everybody just is equal, and I think Pat posted something the other day that was awesome about just equality, and I think it was like a lion eating a freaking, like a deer or something, and it's like, there's no equality in nature. There's no equality. I mean, equality is like is something that's a nice sentiment, but I mean, it's
fictitiously created, it really is fictitiously created. There's a reason that I'm not in the NBA. I'm a good basketball player. Okay. That's the way it is. That's life. We're not equal in those terms. So there's some people out there that are way better at that than me, like most people. I just happen to be better at fighting than most people and was able to win a world title. There's other guys that are great attorneys. We are not attorneys, so that's just the way it is. People have different knacks, different talents. We are definitely not equal across the board, and people should never believe that. Don't believe the lies that people are telling you from the government, from anywhere else. We have an equal chance to be successful, as you mentioned, in this country, and that's about it. That's about it, man. That's the only guarantee we've got.
Right.
Well, they're trying to take that away from us, Pat.
Yeah, they are. And so, the main thing is what you were talking about with work ethic and everything else, and about kids these days and not understanding, I'm blessed. I mean, I've done my best with my kids to tell them, hey, from the time they were little, I'd say, I'm not paying for your college. You better be really good at sports and you better be really good at school because you're paying for it. You're going to get a scholarship. That's how you're going to get it done. Look, I mean, worst case scenario, yeah, help them get through school, of course. But here's the cool thing. Both have worked very hard. They get very good grades. Both are very good athletes and work very, very hard at what they do. My oldest daughter just got a scholarship for rowing and academics to a Florida university. And my sophomore's already getting offers from schools for swimming. So, look, my pep talks worked, right? And that's what I was trying to instill in my kids is, what you're referring to is immigrant mentality. I come from a Croatian background, very hardworking. I mean, I had 3 jobs, pouring concrete and bartending and bouncing at clubs and stuff like that while I was training for fights, just because I have that immigrant mentality. And that's what we really need back in this country.
100%. I mean, just like you, Pat, I mean, I had my dad on his days off would take me to his restaurant he was working at just to have me bust tables and clean. I was like, just a kid, 6, 7 years old sometimes, I mean, he would, it wasn't his restaurant. He'd take me to one of his friends' restaurants and, have me, wash down and wipe down the kitchen, tables and the range and, and then, nothing was for free. That was the biggest thing is like, he wanted me to understand that you gotta work to earn your keep and to put food on the table or put money in your pocket.
And that's the truth, man. That generation, the older generation who's known struggle, I mean, they have to look at this generation being like, it's something they can't even recognize. It's almost comparing apples and giraffes, you know what I mean? Totally different. The world's changed so much. Something I wanted to ask you, actually, we got a few questions from some listeners here. Do you mind taking a couple questions, brother?
No, not at all. Me or Pat? Both of us.
Well, you. I mean, we're all going to chime in, but this is obviously directed to you, and I'll just expound on it. Modern Chinese society is largely controlled by a technological control grid overlay that maps citizens' movements and has implemented a social credit score system. There are people in the U.S. pushing towards this reality here. Could you talk about your thoughts on America moving in the direction that China is currently living in?
It's so scary, you guys. And again, people that have never left American soil, I feel sorry for them, because I think that's where they think that there's just this social injustice here in America. If you've never been in a third world country or a communist country, you are missing out on just appreciation of this great country's freedoms.
Right.
As far as I think it's so scary that the government wouldn't be able to track your movement, track your finances, see who's in your home, see where you go, having checkpoints. I mean, even recently, a few years ago, I went to Moscow. I was in Moscow, and then I went to Kazakhstan, and Moscow was okay, but I mean, as soon as we left, kind of like the touristy area, and got into Kazakhstan and Dagestan, that's some scary stuff, you guys. I mean, that's where literally there's nobody on the roads, and guys, that's what it's looking like right now, man. There's some times where there's nobody on I-40 or I-25 except for a few cars. And you guys have all seen the stuff that's going on in some of the bigger cities and even some of the smaller cities where, the people are being asked, do you have your papers?
Yeah.
And that's literally what they do in communist countries and socialist countries, is you can't go from point A to point B without proper documents.
Or the commissars that are snitching on people who have chosen to, go outside or keep their businesses open. You got what they call snitches. You're getting rewards now, which is just crazy.
They've got a hotline in Colorado. One of my good friends and Pat's good friend, one of Pat's instructors, Mike Frizan, he owns a gym out in in Colorado. He's originally from California, but he hit me up the other day and was like, "Bro, they got a hotline for people to turn other people in," and that's literally happening there. It's happening here. I myself, my business right now, as far as having a gym is, supposed to be shut down by orders of, the dictator governor, and it's private property. So even though I'm not running, classes here, it's still my property. So, I'm getting harassed here because I'm here doing, property improvements. I'm checking on, the database. I'm making sure, everything's not being broken into, things like that. And literally there are people turning us in saying that we're running classes here.
That's insane. Are you serious, dude?
Stops, bro. So they've called us, and they've had 2 other times where, luckily, we have some connections with state police and Albuquerque PD, because myself and Coach Atrell, our former law enforcement, and then we have a lot of law enforcement military here. So we got a couple of heads up that they're coming, but at the same time they're saying we're running classes here, and we're not. And, a lot of people don't understand what they're doing is the governor's bypassing the fact that they can't arrest us. There's no statutes. There's no law now written where the state police or city police can come and arrest you or fine you for any reason. They can't do that. But what they did was they took code enforcement and the fire department and put those 2 entities together. And if you understand what those 2 entities can do is they can literally come into your home, or they can come into your business and say, well, this place is not fit for a dwelling. This place is not. You're in code violations of all your electricity's ran wrong. They can shut you down for multiple reasons, and that's what they're using as citations And then they're threatening that if you have a license of any sorts, which can be a business license, it could be a chiropractor's license to do his profession.
Liquor license.
So you can lose your license, or it can be really, really difficult for you to get your license renewed because you have citations on your record, from these issues. So people don't understand. That's what they're trying to do, is they're circumventing the fact that there are no laws. State police and city police is just here to basically keep the peace in case, kind of shit gets weird. They're just escorts.
Yeah, we need to get our claws into somebody, because obviously the federal government has been sending out emails. States have been sending out emails to municipalities, and there is, especially amongst the far left-leaning politicians and bureaucrats, this stuff has all been pre-planned. This is marching orders 101, man. And so we need to get our claws into somebody who's willing to talk about the procedures, not just the continuity of government procedures, but there's other stuff in here that we're seeing Stasi-like conditions being imposed upon the American people like yourself.
100%, man. Something needs to be done. I know a lot of states and cities, there's been, protests and, marches, things like that. Again, how fast they get shut down, or how many moles are in these little subgroups.
Yes.
So I literally, I started, I was talking to Pat, and he was like, you should, spearhead or join something. So I joined like this little coalition of small businesses, against, unreasonable quarantine, and, I had some ideas, but at the same time, I coming from the background I come in to this thing with not only, law enforcement and regulatory enforcement background, but also with my parents, coming up the way they did. My first thing was to one of the people that are running this group. I'm like, hey, man, we need to be really careful on what we say here, because we don't know if we have eyes. And she goes, I think we have eyes, So, this
Right.
is a concern that, again, these sympathizers that, lack of better terms, are turning people in, and they're just trying to egg things on to see who they can get riled up. And then who knows? Who's going to be at your door next time, knocking on the door.
Jeez, God. Well, yeah, when you got the head of the WHO saying we can come into your house if we suspect somebody is sick, etc., I'm just like,
and remove them.
It's just like, is this freaking 2020? I mean, the world is it's just hard to. It's been for weeks now, but it's just hard to get my mind wrapped around all this, man. It's so crazy. One more question, if you don't mind, and I have my major question I wanted to ask you. China was ruled by the Qing dynasty, Qing dynasty, for centuries before several uprisings and the Chinese-Japanese War. These struggles that left China open for its own Bolshevik revolution, similar to Russia. Do you think communism has been beneficial for the Chinese people?
Well, it's hard to get a really good take on, it's a funny question, right? I chuckle a little bit because, again, there's no free speech, right? It's hard to get somebody's true opinion if you're, number one is, everything's being watched. Number two is that there's a lot of brainwashing that happens when the Communist or Socialist Party come through. And here's the thing that I'm starting to have really big concerns about, you guys, is I think I sent Pat this the other day. My apps on my phone are starting to have little warnings of staying at home. As I'm driving from point A to point B, they're using, so like we all know about the hashtags, right? So they're using hashtag stay at home, hashtag, shop alone. It's like consistent messages over and over. I opened up an app, today to watch, to make a little post for Instagram for one of my Zoom classes. And there's actually apps within there. There's templates for the COVID-19. So I'm like, so there's so much that's going on as far as just you're seeing it over and over and over and over. Stay at home. Don't go anywhere in large groups.
Well, even that Corona task force, Deborah Burke, she even said as a part of phase 1, and you could, I guess, take the language however you want. But she was like, we're part of that's going to be able to track and trace certain movements of people who have tested, et cetera, et cetera. And they make it seem like it's like, no, you go to this website and check in, but they can track and trace through many different ways. It's almost like a lie by omission. Yeah, you can go volunteer this information, but we can also track you.
100%. And going back to, you know, what you guys are talking about people going into your house, the WHO going into your house. I mean, that's, again, when we talk about communist, you know, type activities, that's what happens, right? They now can come into your home, or they're trying to pass this so they can come into your home and move somebody legally out of your house, or make sure that your business is equipped with the right kind of business, you know, filters in the air. Make sure your everything is up to code, or you're getting shut down, you know. And that's one of my main concerns, is even if they open up the economy, you guys, what kind of strings come with that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, you can open your business up, but your restaurant can only have 20% of the capacity. You can open up your gym up, but you know, you have to have this sanitizer that you have to buy from this company. You have to have this amount of space between. You have to have, now, instead of having 2 bathrooms, for this location, you need to have 4. You know, you need to have the, you know, what kind of strings are going to come with us being able to reopen our country and our states? And at what point, you know, here's the question that we all have to ask ourselves, and I know you guys have on the show, is at what point do we give up our civil liberties for other people's to feel safe? What kind of bullshit is that?
Right.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that dawned on me, and I'm not calling myself, maybe I got hit so much that but this, I've been called a lunatic for bringing this up, but most Americans that are calling me a lunatic haven't done the research on Agenda 21, on the Green New Deal that the far-leaning left politicians were talking about, and the stipulations of the bailout package, right?
Yep.
We're talking about, and that combined with, so I want people to research that on their own and go ahead and try and Agenda 21, Green New Deal, and the bailout package, and lay those over the top of each other in terms of what the goals are on those. And then you come back to me and tell me that I'm crazy, because in conjunction with that, you know, they wanted to get rid of fossil fuels in all of those. Fossil fuel now, I mean, the price of a barrel of oil was under $20. You can get gas for $1 a gallon now. So that's just a war on oil. Look, okay, everybody wants to pollute less. I get it. But what's happening is a lot of people that work in the oil industry are losing jobs, and there's going to be a lot more of them. A lot of them. They're not going to be producing oil because they can't afford to drill it and pump it out of the damn ground. So that's how they kill fossil fuel, on top of the mandatory vaccines. You know, Agenda 21 talks about moving citizens from rural areas to urban areas, and then government taking over all food production. And so, and that farmers are losing their farms left and right now. Sorry, my dogs are going nuts. That the airlines are getting hammered on emission controls that are unattainable. Go on, get rid of airplanes in the Green Deal, all of that stuff. It all ties back to this bailout money that went out, people accepting $1,200 as an appeasement to basically lose all their freedoms, because, meatpacking plants are closing all across they're closing, and many will go bankrupt from this. And farmers don't have anywhere to bring their cows. I was just talking to one of the guys, the head of the meat department at because I don't want him to get in trouble.
Pat, you're breaking up.
Yeah, you're freezing up.
We're having trouble getting meat from the farms and stuff. So disrupting all the chains.
You're breaking up pretty gnarly, Pat. I heard you a little bit, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It's, this has all been kind of written out into the Agenda 21 to Agenda 2030. And again, I'll get your opinion on it. You know, we've talked about it, how they're moving society in general from a resource-based economy to an energy-based economy, where this smart grid that we see, the Internet of Things, they will move away from cash and moving towards more of a digital cash, social credit kind of economy, where, you know, they're not listening to you physically, but they're listening to you through all your utilities. And then it comes down to, well, since we don't have cash, how much energy does it take to be Ray? All right, well, Ray, here's your credits for this month, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, it's super, super scary. I mean, it's bad enough that, I mean, and I don't know if everybody realizes it. I don't think general population actually puts two and two together. You know, I mean, how often have we said something with, you know, our phone nearby, and all of a sudden, you know, maybe we're talking about, whatever, like a
anything.
New, yeah, whatever it is, and all of a sudden it pops up on your feed, you know?
Yeah.
That's already happening. And then now we're talking about like this whole 5G thing.
Yes.
And I'm sure Pat is going to bring up what we saw last night, but you know, that's a scary thing, because if they can really start monitoring our activities and going away from, you know, an economy that's based on what it is right now, they can really just flip everything and end on end and really change everything to, again, you know, this agenda that they've been trying to do. And I think they've been systematically doing little bits of it.
Yes.
You know, your Bill Gateses, this technology that they're giving to us, and we're just chomping up. We're chomping up this technology, and we don't understand that technology is going to be our unfolding.
It's Skynet, man. Like you said, it's been, you know, Aldous Huxley said in the 60s that they're going to come up with these means of enslavement, essentially, that we will just clamor for. And our phones and this digital nonsense is just another part of it. I'm trying not to be a hypocrite, because I use it too, but I'm just saying the measure of control and data that they're extracting is going to be crazy. You know, with China being the beta test, I think we're moving right into that AI, facial recognition, social credit. Oh, you crossed the street, or you do this and this, you lost a certain amount of credits, you can't board a plane, you can't take public transportation. It's about to get crazy.
Yeah, what scares me is even like using the Skype. I was downloading it yesterday. I was like, oh shit, it's a Microsoft product. Oh crap.
I know. I mean, there's just no way around it. Yeah. Go ahead, Pat.
Back to the cell phones. I was just going to say, you know, they're tracking us on those for social distancing purposes already. They're putting it out, you know, benign articles. The way they put these articles out is, you know, Rock Island County, Illinois, doing a great job of social distancing, but Scott County, Iowa, not doing a good job of social distancing based cell phone tracking.
100%.
Yeah, they don't even hide it.
They're doing it all over the country. Yeah, so that and so the way that they slide that tracking in to get to it, because it's for a so-called humane purpose,
right,
to keep us all safe. That's the craziness about it. Why people aren't freaking out about that and losing their minds is beyond me.
Well, that's part of what we talked about, the trauma-based conditioning. They just you do almost abdicate your own normal mind and your own common sense once they utilize fear. These social engineers and these behavioral scientists, they know exactly what they're doing. They've been monitoring us and doing tests on us forever. And this is just them implementing the stuff they've learned. You know, Pompeo saying this is a live exercise right in front of the freaking world, and Trump's like, "Oh, should have told me," but it doesn't change that. Yeah, this is. Right. It's crazy.
Well, Kevin, one of somebody had a question here. Kevin said, "We burn the 5G." Well, there's going to be tons of 5G towers already are going up all over the nation right now. I am not advocating for arson or destruction of anything, but I can tell you that 5G, from the research we've done and the guests we've had on, 5G is not good for humanity. Let's put it that way.
I mean, the towers in of itself and its larger application, like we were talking, I don't know if you were phased out there for a little, Pat, but I mean, this control grid, this Internet of Things, this smart grid that they're building,
right.
Which, I mean, when I came in from, apparently you and Ray both had the same conversation about what was in the sky last night. I looked up there and didn't really see much, but I came inside and asked if anybody was sky watching, and my Twitter, I mean, it was just, yes, people were sky watching. They were seeing what some of them were saying were satellites. I mean, I don't know if people were seeing right turns or anything, but apparently these satellites that Musk and those guys are putting up there are so abundant that people are just like, wow, look at that. Oh, wow, look at that. I mean, Pat, you said you and your daughter every few seconds, she's like, Daddy, this. Oh, Dad. You know, you were seeing them all over the place.
Yeah. So I live in an area, I'm out, but we drove further out north, and we sat in my pickup. We got out of my pickup truck and got in the bed of the pickup truck, and it was maybe a minute or two, and we started seeing them. They look like stars, but they're zipping across the sky. There's no sound, and they're everywhere. They're going directions. There's some trains of them, 4 or 5 in a row.
What?
They're everywhere. And then Ray went out and started looking for them too. And Ray can tell you what he saw, man. I mean, look, my daughter's 15 years old and seeing this stuff. I believe that it is Skynet. It is all the satellites that they put up to the 5G towers that they're going to put up everywhere. But I mean, other people are saying they're seeing these satellites stop and turn and go different directions and all kinds of stuff. So it's crazy stuff that's happening in the skies. Ray, maybe you can talk about what you guys saw.
Yeah. So, I talked to you after you and your daughter had saw what you saw, and after I fed the dogs, I wanted to go out a little bit farther out towards the Native American res out by my house, and I decided I was just going to see what I could see outside. I live already kind of on the outskirts of town already. And so I go down and I shut off all the lights. I go outside and immediately I see what Pat's talking about. I'm like, holy crap. And so, I tell my girlfriend, come out here. And she sees them too. And I'm like, okay, let's go upstairs, because I have a balcony that wraps around the house and overlooks the Sandia Mountains, which is, east side of New Mexico. And so we go up there and I start seeing more and more. So instead of 5, now I see 9, and I see 10.
What?
Then I see 14 of them. And then on top of these, you guys, there were drones outside flying. There were drones that were flying low, and they were crisscrossing each other. And then there was a military chopper that flew by, and the thing just creeped me the hell out. Immediately I get on the phone. I'm texting Pat. I'm trying to call Pat. I'm like, holy crap, you're right, bro. And it's like literally, it was so disconcerting. And then Eric Polson, who's one of my instructors, we talked about him earlier. He's always been, kind of like-minded like me and Pat. And he hits me up about 1 o'clock at my time and sends me this thing, which I forwarded to Pat. There are 60 of these satellites, so-called satellites, around our globe. So if they've emitted to 60 of them, how many of them really are there out there? Do you guys know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's crazy, because Pat called me. He's like, dude, look in the sky. I'm like, dude, I'm 400 miles away. What are you talking about? And then, like, everybody around the country was like, dude, there's shit in the sky. So the fact that you're in New Mexico and you saw stuff too, holy crap, what's going on?
Oh, man, it was freaky. And what was really interesting was, I was telling Pat, like, right at dusk, I started hearing, gunfire, like just pop, 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 like large caliber, like 50 caliber, large military, type mounted, assault rifles. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right at all. I mean, we're out in the desert, but that still doesn't sound right. And then all of a sudden, right after that, the dogs start going crazy nonstop until it starts getting dark. And then they keep going ape shit all night long while the drones are flying around, while this, and I don't know what are these satellites emitting? Like you said, the 5G, I've done some research just in just skimming it, and it's not good for us. We've already proven that with when they expanded the radio waves, that it's not good for us to F with the stratosphere and all the different levels of our atmosphere, and right. The waves screw everything up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the thing is, there's definitely a difference between. I haven't seen any drones. I'm pretty rural out here in Iowa, but I can tell you this: what we saw last night was definitely not drones. And then you seeing drones on top of that and military choppers. What are they planning? What on earth are they putting together here, man? This is
he did.
So did we have people freaking out and talking about this before we got shut in our houses? Did people notice these things flying around before we got shut in our houses like this? That magnitude?
I don't necessarily remember stories, but I mean, hell, Trump did just create the space agency, which is literally another military branch. So I think these kind of things are gonna become more commonplace as they slowly, in my opinion, do what they call soft disclosure. They're basically telling us shit's out there. Like we were saying earlier, they just don't roll it out at once. It's a slow roll to kind of acclimate the public to the possibility of it.
Yeah, rolling it out right now when everybody's so focused on COVID-19. You know, and we were just talking about this, Pat, how intelligent people, educated, intelligent people that are doctors, lawyers, you know, that have tons of schooling are behaving like people that have zero thought for themselves and are staying at home and down their screens. And again, they're over and over, stay at home. You know, all they're doing is showing you the number of infected cases, the number that are dying. They are not showing us how many people have recovered, which is a 98 percentile.
Yeah. It doesn't work, man. That doesn't sell. It's part of the fear campaign if you do that.
And we don't want to discount the fact, look, there are people that are dying tragically from respiratory virus, from a respiratory virus. Many of them, for the most part, are elderly. That doesn't make it any less tragic, but you know, pre-existing conditions. You know, healthy, strong, young people are going to cough for a while, and they're going to get over it. It's generally not going to kill those folks. So I talked about already having it in January. A bunch of people had it. Did you catch it in January, Ray?
Yeah, man. So my mother, who's 84 now, she's had a couple bouts of pneumonia over the last 2 years. But right at the end of the year, right, literally on Christmas Eve, I go to visit her at her adult living facility, and she didn't look right. She wasn't acting right. The day after Christmas, we put her immediately into a nursing facility. She was there for over 3 weeks. Was just out of it. I mean, really, really bad. Thank gosh, my mom, pulled through. She's again, a warrior. We can, look at just the background, but caught something during that time, just in visiting with her, and then also, at the time, I was hanging out with my ex-girlfriend and her son, and they had it, and they definitely, I was down. I was, and this is like right after Pat, you and I hung out, just sick as a dog for about probably a good week, week and a half or so. But again, I think the thing is that people got this early on, and they just didn't coin it as COVID-19. I think what they were doing was just, it was again a test phase.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the beta test.
Because all the people that were getting tested for pneumonia, getting tested for the flu, and all the tests were coming.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Pat.
Well, while Pat chimes back in, a question. I'm, looking at your bio, and I saw that you not only know Dan Inosanto, but you practice Jeet Kune Do. You teach with him or teach under him. I was just like blown away because obviously, as an old school martial arts Bruce Lee fan, the old documentaries I would always see Dan Inosanto, etc. When I was a young lad, bro, 20, 21, 22, me and my boys took a road trip, man. We were literally in the bush for like a month and a half, did not even come out barely. And the book I bought before I went was the Tao Jeet Kune Do, which obviously translated The Way of the Intercepting Fist. And obviously Bruce is such a freaking genius. He presented it in such an amazing way about fighting and warfare, etc. But for me, and I think it wasn't an accident, he presents it also as a philosophy, as a way of life of sorts. As one of some of his lines are, be water, my friend, having no way as way. And I've taken that to heart and always, that's, I wouldn't say my Bible, but I've really tried to follow that. And what do you think? Because I extrapolate that and I apply it to society. So much extreme tribalism, if you will, which Bruce in the way of fighting would be equated as the fixed positions, right? The dogmatic rigidness and inflexibility that disallows you to respond in a certain way in a fight. You know what I mean?
100%, Jeff. I think you hit it on the head as far as Sijo Bruce Lee's philosophies. The book was much more. People don't understand, and a lot of people that looked at it that didn't have the understanding of what he was trying to do is that book was not meant to be a manual on how to be a badass martial artist. There were notes from his training as far as like what worked for him. There was a lot of Taoist and Buddhist, type, verses that were put in there. There was a lot of just, taking martial arts and taking these different, kind of doctrines and kind of applying them to life, and being able to transcend just fighting and utilizing the strategies of fighting for life struggles. And again, if we talk about a book like, whatchamacallit, the Art of War.
Sun Tzu,
phenomenal, right? I read it when I was much younger, and I didn't understand it. As an adult now, and as a business owner, 100% now, I see just it's literally a blueprint on what you should and shouldn't do,
right,
in business. As a leader, and what's fair and what's not fair. So yeah, I think Bruce was, I think, and Pat and everybody, to this day, Joe Rogan, everybody, talks about how he was the founding father of MMA, and I truly believe he was. I think, had he lived and he's still alive, it would look even more different than in the landscape is right now. I think because he consistently evolved. To my understanding, under Sifu Asano, Mr. Asano tells his stories a lot. He's such an amazing human being, but he's also an amazing teacher in the sense that he always is telling us stories and teaching us martial arts. But he would tell us how Sifu Bruce would come in and literally be like a week and a half, 2 weeks, after they'd seen each other trained, and Mr. Asano was the main instructor, while Bruce was doing all the movies and doing stuff. But Bruce was evolving in such a fast manner that he would literally come back the next time they were trained together. He said, no, that's wrong now. Don't do that. This is what I'm doing now. And this is far superior to this last technique. And what Mr. Asano would say was, it was literally, he was on that path mentally and physically, where nobody else was putting these things together and really kind of looking at it. And I think that we can, as civilization, as humans, we can take something like that and again look at, okay, religions, beliefs, martial arts. You can transcend all the dogmatic, things that we're taught by just looking around, and like Pat said, research these things, do your own studies. People don't understand that these loans that they're giving out is nobody remembers the Dust Bowl. Nobody remembers all the farms that people's homesteads that got taken away from them that weren't legally, they weren't able to take them away before that shit happened. But then they gave loans, and then all of a sudden they defaulted, and then guess what? All that property just now gets auctioned off. And guess who's going to come in, swoop in with a bunch of money and take it?
Yeah.
Corporations.
I just wish, man, I swear. I mean, I'd end with this and Pat jump in. I just wish society could pull some more of that, because you just see it now. People are so rigid, so inflexible in their political thoughts, their religious thoughts, et cetera. You can't even have conversations. You know what I mean? Relationships are breaking up, et cetera. And I just hear Bruce in my head, be water, my friend, be water, my friend. And I think if we could just do a little bit more of that. And that's not to mean you'll fall for anything because you stand for nothing, but almost, take what is beneficial for you and reject what isn't. If that's different than somebody else, that's okay. You know what I mean? People need to have their position, but don't let their position have them.
It's I think Bruce Lee, the description that you gave of Bruce and coming back and talking to Dan and doing that and changing things up as easily as he could meant he was completely humble. He connected no fiber of his being to a belief system that made that be the way that things had to be. And I'm sure you'll agree with this, when mixed martial arts started, when it was called Ultimate Fighting, I looked at it and went, I was blessed to not be the best wrestler in the world. I was blessed that I was good, but I wasn't the best wrestler. Certainly nowhere near the best wrestler, even in my hometown. Animals. And said, well, why wouldn't you want to be good at everything? Why wouldn't you want to be good? Why wouldn't you want to pull the things that make you good at this, instead of the guys that say, well, I'm a karate expert and that's what I'm going in with, and that's live or die by the sword type thing. And they'd go in and get butchered because they didn't have, the full repertoire of how to fight. So that's the way I talk about with the mindset of religion now, the mindset of politics. Exactly what you're talking about is people have been pounded. And I'll give you a perfect example. I was on earlier with a guy from, who was a bigwig at Bear Stearns. The guy's worth $100 million. And I was just on the phone with him. And you're Jeff. But anyway, he said what changed his life was he was working with one New York senator's son. And there was a Republican and a Democrat at that time in the state for the state of New York in Washington, D.C. And publicly, they slammed each other, hated each other, talked about each corruption, this and that. And then one day, the Republican D.C. senator walked into Bear Stearns, walked up to the Democrat senator's son, hugged him, kissed him on the side of the head, and said, "I love you." And then Democrat, the father of that guy that he worked with, walked in. So both of them were in the office in Bear Stearns giving each other hugs. And he goes to the son, he goes, "Dude, what's going on?" Because these guys publicly hate each other. Don't you understand, dude? This is politics. These guys love each other. They're playing the people from both sides, brother. And I went, wow, yeah, it's true. It's true. And he goes, that was the moment that changed my life, and I instantly started hoarding gold and silver and guns and ammo and all kinds of stuff, man. I'm worth a lot of money now because of that moment.
A lifelong lesson.
And that is so deep.
But I mean, that's true. I mean, we say, it's WWE, man, and a lot of times we just argue about, no, Andre Giant's going to win in WrestleMania 3. No, the fucking Hulkster, there's no way he can take him. And it's like literally arguing over a fixed game, and Vince McMahon's back there laughing his ass off, just cashing checks. But hopefully we can get a little bit more wave the intercepting fist in our life and be Walter, my friend.
100%, you guys.
Well, Ray.
So what's going on in New Mexico? What's the governor saying? When are you guys free? Supposedly.
And the governor here is, so New Mexico was about probably 3 to 4 weeks behind everybody else as far as, the shutdown goes. I think we shut down, the school started shutting down first, and then my mother was put into isolation, which again, I'm very thankful for. But, we've been shut down for about a month now. But I think that the New Mexico governor, the biggest thing about her, you guys, is she's trying to jockey for position for a vice presidential candidate. She wants to be on the ticket. She's trying to claim. Here's the most interesting things. She's trying to claim that all these there's not as many cases in New Mexico, but yes, she doesn't want to open up the economy. But then just today, all of a sudden, I sent this to Pat. They're now going to start shipping in. Or flying people in from Arizona that have COVID-19. And just the other day, they had, and again, people are not reading the fine print. They're not reading the entire article. They're looking at the big headline. But the other day, they had a breakdown of all the cases in New Mexico. And what they didn't look at was the fact that they were using some numbers from the Navajo Nation or Navajo County, which is over in Arizona. They were using numbers from Utah. They were using all these other numbers to make New Mexico's, affected, and death rates, and so now they're flying people in. I think she is power hungry. She's, publicly gone above and beyond to shut down businesses like Calibers, which is a gun store here that is the biggest indoor range in New Mexico. A couple, last week, the owner basically came out and said, "I'm suing you guys because this is one of our amendments, and I'm not gonna back down." Well, they shut him down. Next day, he opens back up. Fox News, not just a local one, the international, the big one comes out, interviews him, and she sends state police to shut him down again. So again, there's an underlying agenda here. There's something besides just saving lives. She's coming out on interviews with a picture of her mom, you guys, and saying, "You guys are killing my mom. Stay at home." I mean, from somebody that has an elderly mother, I'm so offended by that. I'm so incredibly offended by that a politician would just use that kind of tactic to try and just fear people into staying at home or shame people into staying at home, you guys. You know what I mean?
Never let a good crisis go to waste, they say.
We've talked about this before. As you said, this is not about us. This is about the banks were headed off a cliff. We knew that. Anybody that was paying attention knew that they were going off a cliff because of the QE programs from the 2008 collapse. They blew up the bubbles. And look, any way you slice this, even if they wouldn't have shut anything down, we were headed for a massive financial collapse and a recession of massive proportions, depression, whatever you want to call it. So they're just using this for cover so that citizens don't drag their politicians and the elite bankers out into this and hang them publicly. I'm telling you right now, because this is going to be bad. And I want people to understand that they think that things are going to go back to normal when they let us go back to work. It's not going to be normal. It's not. People don't realize how bad this is going to be. And there's a lot of people out there who are afraid to say anything about it. I'm not afraid to say anything about it, but people better be ready, man, because this is going to get a lot worse. What they have in store for us after the virus passes, you have no clue, man. No clue.
Well, and this is what's been so dope about getting Ray's perspective, having a family who's come from somewhere where it does get that bad, where his father had to crawl to his knees, on broken glass to his freedom. And when you start seeing things like food shortages, restriction of movement, etc., the level of surveillance we're seeing, whoa, ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because many people who don't think it can get that bad, history has proven otherwise. And I don't think people should think just because it's, 50, 80 years has passed since Stalin and all that it can't happen again. So, Ray, I can't thank you enough, bro, for your time and just breaking off some very interesting information about your experience, your life, being a badass motherfucker around here. Hey, if you got any social networking, where can we find you? Track you down, man. See what you've been up to.
I just fired up CoachRayYee.com. It's still in the works. It's not 100% yet, but it's up. On Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, everything's just literally under Coach Ray Yee. And YouTube, everything is literally under that. A good friend of mine, I know Pat knows, Tracy Lee, used to be a photographer for the UFC. Tracy helped me with my original branding, and she had me just do everything simply, Coach Ray Yee. So anybody that's looking for me can find me just under that handle.
Sweet.
Beautiful.
Patrick J., any final words?
Man, thank you, Ray. It's a pleasure to talk to you, man, and I'm looking forward to when we can get out of our houses. And, well, I mean, in Iowa, we're not that restricted, but when we can travel, do shows again, train with you, and enjoy some collie and some knife fighting, brother, and some camaraderie, some patriotism. Anytime,
man. Anytime you and Jeff need anything, man, you guys just hit me up. You guys got my number, and I'd be just honored and blessed to spend some time with you guys again.
Likewise, my friend. Likewise. Ray Yee, ladies and gentlemen, check him out. Champ, love you. Ray, love you back, brother. And stay well, everybody. Stay well out there. Peace and so much love. Stay tuned. Always, there will be more.